It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon in a small, upscale bistro tucked away in downtown Los Angeles. The kind of place where polished cutlery clinks softly against bone-white plates, and conversations remain hushed and sophisticated. But that day would be different. That day, one server's casual rudeness would trigger a moment that would change her life and leave an entire restaurant in stunned silence. The customer? None other than Keanu Reeves, Hollywood's most humble superstar, a man who's walked red carpets and dodged bullets as Neo in The Matrix, but who still rides the subway, carries his own groceries, and lives by a quiet code of kindness and empathy. But even Keanu wasn't prepared for the waitress's reaction when he placed his modest order. She rolled her eyes. It seemed harmless, a reflex, a moment of judgment. But Keanu noticed, and instead of responding with anger, he responded with something far more powerful. A lesson, a story, and a tip that no one would ever forget. Chapter 1. The Waitress with a Chip on Her Shoulder. Samantha Hayes had been a waitress at Liqueur for nearly 3 years. The restaurant was chic, modern, and expensive, a favorite among celebrities, CEOs, and influencers who wore designer shoes and carried six-figure handbags. But Samantha didn't come from that world. She was working double shifts, trying to pay off college loans and support her younger brother after their mother passed away unexpectedly. The stress weighed on her, and the constant flood of entitled customers didn't help. Samantha had learned to spot time wasters and low tippers from a mile away. To her, they were the ones who didn't dress the part. No designer labels, no flashy watches, no air of superiority. She judged quickly because she thought she had to. So when a soft-spoken man walked in wearing a worn leather jacket, scuffed boots, and no entourage in sight, she pegged him immediately. Another cheap table. Probably some wannabe actor or YouTuber trying to soak in the ambiance without ordering much. She gave him a forced smile as he sat alone by the window. "Welcome to Liqueur. What can I get you?" His voice was calm, polite, almost too quiet for the room. "Just a cup of coffee and the garden salad, please. No dressing." Samantha raised an eyebrow. Then, before she could stop herself, she rolled her eyes. Just coffee and salad? In a place where appetizers started at $30? Chapter 2. A strange familiarity. As she turned to input the order, something tugged at the edge of Samantha's mind. That voice. That face. It was familiar. Too familiar. She glanced back over her shoulder. Was that number? It couldn't be. Keanu Reeves? No way, she thought. What would he be doing here, dressed like that, eating a $10 salad? She pulled out her phone and discreetly Googled him. The images confirmed what her gut was telling her. That quiet man at table 9 was indeed one of the most beloved actors in Hollywood. Her heart skipped a beat. Now a sudden wave of panic crept in. Had he noticed her rolling her eyes? Did he think she was rude? Would he complain to the manager? She took a breath and walked back to his table. "I just wanted to say, I'm a big fan," she said, trying to recover. "Loved you in John Wick." He smiled, warm and genuine. "Thank you. That means a lot." No anger, no coldness, just kindness. It disarmed her, but she had no idea what was coming next. Chapter 3. The Man Behind the Legend. While Samantha disappeared to prepare his order, Keanu sat quietly, looking out the window. He wasn't scrolling on his phone or asking for attention. He simply existed in the space, serene and unbothered. The truth was, Keanu wasn't in Los Angeles for business. He wasn't here for a movie shoot or an award ceremony. He was here to visit an old friend, one who had fallen on hard times and needed support. The humility he carried was real, not for show. And that day he had chosen to eat light, not because he couldn't afford more, but because he never liked wasting anything, not food, money, or opportunities to make someone's day better. And right now he sensed that someone needed that more than ever. Chapter 4. A Flash of Guilt. Back in the kitchen, Samantha's heart raced. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted the cup on the saucer, carefully pouring the coffee. She watched the dark liquid swirl and thought about her own assumptions. Why had she judged him so quickly? She wasn't usually this careless. But the pressure of bills, her second rent warning, and her brother's tuition installment had turned her into someone she didn't recognize anymore. She placed the plate and cup onto a tray, steadied herself, and walked back out. This time, her smile was real. "Here you go, sir. I brought some lemon slices, too, just in case you wanted something light with the salad." Keanu looked up at her, eyes kind, and said, "That's thoughtful. Thank you." It wasn't much, but it felt like a second chance. Chapter 5. Small Talk, Big Heart. Samantha lingered for a moment, torn between walking away and apologizing. But to her surprise, Keanu spoke first. "Has it been a long day?" She blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, you could say that." He nodded. "I used to work in restaurants. Not easy, especially when people forget you're human, too." She laughed nervously. "You? In restaurants?" "Yeah," he said. "Dishwasher, then server, then delivery driver. I know what it's like to be invisible." Those words hit her hard. Invisible. That's exactly how she'd been feeling lately. Just another face in the crowd, working double shifts and scraping by while the world passed her by. For the first time in months, she felt seen. Chapter 6. A Stranger's Story. They talked a little more while he ate. Nothing deep, just light conversation. He asked her name, asked about her favorite dish on the menu. He complimented her professionalism, even though she knew she'd slipped at first. She didn't bring up the eye roll. Neither did he. But in her heart, it sat like a stone. When he finished, he placed his napkin neatly beside the plate, took one last sip of coffee, and stood. Samantha reached for the checkbook, but he raised a hand. "No need," he said softly. She blinked. Sorry?" "I already gave my card to the host," he said, "but I wanted to leave something here for you." He pulled a slim black envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. Samantha stared at it, confused. "I hope today gets better," he said. "Thanks for the salad." And with that, he walked out. No drama, no entourage, just the quiet footsteps of a man who never acted like he was better than anyone else. Chapter 7. The Envelope. Samantha stood frozen for a moment, still holding the checkbook. Customers bustled, plates clattered, but her world had gone quiet. She opened the envelope. Inside was a crisp note written on hotel stationery, "To Samantha. A little something to remind you that kindness always matters, even when others forget to show it. Thank you for doing your best today. K." And beneath the note, a personal check. She had to blink to make sure she was seeing it right. $10,000. Chapter 8. Tears in the Back Room. Samantha nearly dropped the envelope. She rushed into the back room, her hands shaking. Her manager followed, confused. "What happened? Are you okay?" She handed him the check. He stared. "Is this real?" She nodded. "It's from him, Keanu Reeves." The manager let out a low whistle. "Well, you might be the first person in history to roll their eyes at him and get rewarded." She couldn't help but laugh through the tears. "I didn't deserve it." But her manager just smiled. Sometimes, grace shows up anyway. Chapter 9. The Lesson in the Tip. That night, Samantha walked home under the city lights with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just the money, it was the message. She had misjudged someone. She had let her stress turn into cynicism. But instead of responding with spite or arrogance, Keanu had chosen compassion. He saw the pain she didn't speak, and through a simple gesture, quiet, unpublicized, utterly human, he reminded her of who she wanted to be. Chapter 10. Word spreads fast. By the next morning, word had spread. A hostess had posted a photo of Keanu leaving the restaurant with the caption, "He came in alone, ordered a salad and coffee, left the biggest tip we've ever seen." The post went viral in hours. News outlets picked up the story. Samantha's inbox was flooded with interview requests. She turned them down. Not because she wasn't grateful, but because the moment felt personal, sacred even. She didn't want to cash in on kindness. She wanted to honor it. Chapter 11. The Call from Home. That evening, after the dinner rush ended and the last of the silverware had been polished, Samantha finally checked her phone. She had ignored it all day, overwhelmed by the surreal events. But one notification caught her attention. A missed call from her younger brother, Ethan. She called him back immediately. "Sam? Oh my God, did that really happen? I saw your name online. Everyone at my dorm's talking about it." She laughed, wiping tears from the corner of her eyes. "Yeah, it happened." "You met Keanu Reeves?" "Not just met him. He changed my life." They spoke for over an hour, not just about the check or the viral moment, but about their mom, their struggles, the way life had felt like a constant uphill climb. For the first time in months, they didn't just talk logistics, they reconnected. It wasn't just money, it was momentum and hope. Chapter 12. The Manager's Office. The next morning, Samantha was called into her manager's office. She braced herself, unsure what to expect. Had she broken some rule by accepting such a large tip? Was this going to be awkward? Her manager, Dan, closed the door gently. "Listen," he began. "Corporate saw the post. They're getting a ton of attention. Media outlets are asking questions. Some people are speculating about whether it was staged." Samantha stiffened. "What?" Dan raised his hands. I know it wasn't. I was here. I saw the whole thing. But they want to use it for a publicity campaign." She blinked. "Seriously?" He nodded. "They're offering you a small media contract, brand ambassador stuff. You don't have to say yes, but it could mean more income." Samantha stared at him, stunned. "This is really happening." Dan smiled. "Keanu started something. Might be your moment to ride the wave." Chapter 13. A Hard Choice. That night, Samantha sat at her kitchen table, staring at two things, the contract and the check. She hadn't deposited the money yet. Part of her still didn't believe it was real, and part of her felt guilty accepting it. Was this really okay? Did she deserve it? She thought back to how she'd treated Keanu at first, that knee-jerk judgment, that eye roll. But then she remembered something else, what he said about being invisible, about struggling through service jobs, about people forgetting their servers were human. Maybe he gave her the money not because she was perfect, but because he saw that she wasn't, and that she wanted to be better. That was a gift too, not just the check, the chance to grow. Chapter 14. The Deposit. The next morning she walked into the bank. Hands trembling slightly, she handed the check to the teller. The woman looked at the signature and raised an eyebrow. "Is this who I think it is?" Samantha smiled. "Yeah. You're the waitress from that post, huh?" "I guess I am." With a final stamp, the deposit went through. Just like that, her rent was secured. Her brother's next semester covered. And for the first time since her mother died, Samantha felt like she could breathe again. Chapter 15. Going Viral. By the end of the week, her story had been covered by half a dozen media outlets: BuzzFeed, People magazine, even a spot on Good Morning America. The restaurant leaned into the publicity. They renamed the garden salad the Reeves Greens. They printed signs about kindness and gratitude on their menus. Business boomed. But Samantha didn't chase the spotlight. She kept working, smiling more, and rolling her eyes less. Customers began to recognize her. Some asked for photos. Others left large tips in honor of Keanu. But she never took it for granted. Each gesture reminded her of a simple truth. One act of grace can ripple through the lives of countless people. Chapter 16. A letter from Keanu. 2 weeks later, a small package arrived at the restaurant. No return address. Just her name, handwritten in smooth, deliberate cursive. Inside was a letter. "Dear Samantha, I didn't mean to cause a media storm. I only meant to pass along something I wish someone had given me when I was working late nights and eating one meal a day. A break. Life can be brutal. People can be careless. But sometimes, when we least expect it, someone shows up and reminds us we're not alone. I saw the way your shoulders carried weight. I've been there. You're stronger than you think. Keep going. Keanu." Folded inside was a small, worn bracelet, a leather band with one word engraved on a thin metal plate: human. Chapter 17. Sharing the wealth. Instead of spending the money on luxury or quitting her job, Samantha made a decision. She would use part of it to launch something small but powerful, a weekly kindness fund for other service workers at her restaurant. Every Sunday, she picked one coworker, someone who stayed late, covered shifts, or just needed help, and gave them a cash envelope with no strings attached. Word spread. Tips went up across the restaurant. Customers started leaving kind notes along with money. One even matched her fund donation. It became a movement, not about fame, not about Keanu, but about paying grace forward. Chapter 18. A face in the crowd. Months passed. Summer turned into fall. The buzz faded. Samantha kept working. But things had changed. She no longer dreaded her shifts. She no longer judged customers by what they wore or how much they ordered. She listened more, smiled more. Then one day, in the middle of a busy dinner rush, a quiet man sat at a table 9. Same seat, same leather jacket. Her heart skipped. It was him. Again. Chapter 19. Table 9. Again. Samantha stared for a moment, tray in hand, as the noise of the restaurant faded around her. The lighting hadn't changed. The chatter was still lively. The kitchen bell still rang. But her world felt still. It was Keanu Reeves, not an imposter, not a dream. He sat quietly, glancing over the menu. When their eyes met, he offered a small nod. Not smug, not knowing, just human. Just like the first time. Samantha walked over with a smile that was no longer practiced. It was earned. "Back for another salad and coffee?" she asked gently. Keanu smiled. "I figured I'd check if the service had improved." She laughed, and this time she didn't look away in shame. Chapter 20. Full circle. As she poured his coffee and brought over his salad, this time with fresh parsley and a perfectly arranged lemon wedge, Keanu looked around the room. The restaurant was buzzing, tables full, staff smiling. On the wall, he spotted something. A small plaque framed behind the hostess stand. It read, "Be the reason someone feels seen today. Inspired by an unexpected guest." He raised an eyebrow. "That's new." Samantha nodded. "A lot has changed since you last sat here." She told him everything: the kindness fund, the community donations, the co-workers who could finally pay for car repairs or textbooks, the customers who left thank you notes instead of complaints. Keanu listened quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. You started a ripple, she said softly, and it's still spreading. Chapter 21. The photo he took. Before leaving that day, Keanu did something unexpected. He took out his phone. Mind if I take a photo of the wall plaque? He asked. Samantha smiled. Of course not. He stepped back, took the shot, then paused and turned the camera toward her. Actually, can I take a photo of you too? For me, not for press. She blinked. Me. You remind me of someone I used to be, he said. The honesty in his voice was humbling. She nodded and he snapped a candid shot. No makeup, no pose, just a woman who had learned the hard way how powerful a single act of grace can be. Chapter 22. A New Story. That night, Samantha sat in her apartment, thinking. She had come a long way from the overworked, overwhelmed woman who rolled her eyes and judged too quickly. She had learned not just from Keanu, but from the people who showed up because of him, her co-workers, her customers, and even strangers online who shared their own stories. So she decided to write a blog. One post turned into 5, then a newsletter. Soon, thousands subscribed. She called it Tips from the Table. Each week, she shared stories of humanity from behind the scenes, of servers, cooks, janitors, delivery drivers, the invisible people who kept the world running. And always, she ended each post with a reminder. Kindness is never wasted, not even when it goes unseen. Chapter 23. An Invitation. Months passed again. Life didn't become perfect, but it became purposeful. Then, one morning, a letter arrived. Real paper, embossed seal. From a non-profit that Keanu Reeves secretly supported. They had read her blog, seen what she'd done with the money, and they had an idea. Would you consider becoming an ambassador for our new nationwide campaign, Human First, focused on uplifting service industry workers? There was a stipend, a speaking tour, a feature in a national magazine. But more than anything, it was a platform, a microphone for the very people she used to stand beside in the break room, hoping for tips big enough to pay rent. Samantha said yes. Chapter 24. The Conference Stage. Her first speaking engagement was in New York. She stood backstage, palms sweating, heart pounding. Her name echoed across the auditorium as the host introduced her. Former waitress, writer, advocate, and the woman who proved that sometimes a single tip can change more than a bank balance. It can change a life. As she stepped onto the stage, she saw a familiar face in the crowd. Front row, Keanu. No cameras, no press badge, just a quiet nod of encouragement. She told her story, voice steady, about the eye roll, the salad, the envelope, the bracelet, the second chance. And when she ended, the room rose to their feet. Chapter 25. From Tip to Legacy. Over the next 2 years, Human First spread to over 100 cities. Restaurants and cafes began offering emotional wellness programs to staff. Tip sharing became more transparent. Patrons donated to hardship relief funds. Thousands of stories were shared through Samantha's blog. She received letters from baristas in rural towns, single dads waiting tables in big cities, teenagers paying their families' rent with diner jobs. And through it all, Samantha kept showing up, not as a hero, but as someone who once made a mistake and was given the grace to learn from it. One act of kindness had become a legacy. Chapter 26. A Return to the Table. Years later, on a quiet spring evening, Samantha walked back into the same restaurant where it all began. It looked different now, renovated, brighter, full of life. A new server approached her, clearly nervous. Hi, welcome. Would you like to sit inside or on the patio? Samantha smiled. "Table 9, please, if it's open." The young man blinked. You're her, aren't you?" She smiled again. "I'm just someone who used to roll her eyes too much." He laughed, embarrassed. "I hope I don't mess up your order." She leaned in gently. "You won't. Just remember, you're not invisible." As she sipped her coffee and looked around the room, she thought about how far she'd come, and silently she whispered a thank you to the stranger who left more than a tip, to the kindness that rippled through her life like a stone dropped in still water, to Grace, unannounced, unassuming, unforgettable. Like this video and subscribe this channel for more videos, and hit the bell icon. Thanks for watching this video.